the brain's divided into these the dominating part of what I call the accountant or the continent of reason that wants everything to be orderly, all the trains running on time, uh, nobody shows up late. We're always watching the clock. And the reason we do that is that it generates money, and money generates life and keeps people fed and all of that. So that's the main part of the brain. Then there's part of your brain that is what I call the visionary islands, and they are the parts of your brain that seem to be just floating around this continent of reason and have crazy ideas, don't understand the clock, don't feel the need to be on the same timetable as anybody else. For example, if you ever been in a situation where you see a friend that you haven't seen for 10 years, and within 30 seconds of seeing them, you're back on the same exact wavelength that you were on the last time you were there, you see that there's been a jump in time, or that time has actually stood still. The time,
Mm,
the island of time in which your friendship existed
yeah.
is still exactly the way it was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And that's because it's truly a visionary part of your life. And and then the third part of your mind is what I call the managing editor. It's the awareness factor. It's the part of your mind that is aware these other two exist and realizes that they're in a combat, kind of a lethal combat, and try to intervene between them to make them work together, and makes bargains with them. So it says to the continent, just let me work 1 hour a day on my book, and I'll be your slave the rest of the day, and you go to the post office and do the work I'm supposed to do and all of that. And it makes a bargain, because if it makes that bargain, then the continent will shut up for an hour instead of trying to interrupt the writing, and that process is goes on. And the more you're aware of the process, the happier you are, because you realize you can control it by being aware, and whether you're talking about a spiritual quest like Eckhart Tolle, who's talking about awareness being the step between the ego and sheer being. That's kind of what's happening in the creative mind too, is the managing editor is trying to intervene to allow the islands to express themselves. That means the continent's got to shut up its nagging and shut up its argumentation that this isn't going to lead anywhere. You're not going to make any money from it. Why are you doing it? Why don't you go back to the post office and work hard and get a bigger paycheck? And you got to shut that voice up, or you'll never get anything done as a creator.
Mm. So do you think everyone is born creative and people who don't go creative ways have a hard time shutting that voice up?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, I think there's inklings of creativity in everybody. There's what I call the artistic syndrome, where people talk about being artists and are constantly doing things that artists do, but never do produce anything. And that's because their continent is shutting them up. They're just strangling the islands of creativity,
Mm. That's super
because
interesting. Sorry?
and the continent is based on its motivating factor is survival and fear, and that's what it's based on. And fear is, huge motivator, and so you've got to overcome that fear if you're going to actually do something creative. You have to turn your back on it, and that's what the managing editor allows you to do: turn your back on the reasonable part of your mind, and buy as much time away from it as you can.